Let me get started here. I've been asked to give a quick video.
Communication software that lets you visually communicate product information using your existing 3D product design data. This helps speed time to market, maximize comprehension, and provide detailed product images and animations to solidify your competitive advantage. Easy to learn and use, SolidWorks Composer helps design engineers, manufacturing engineers, technical illustrators, aftermarket service providers, and product marketers to produce a wide variety of high-quality 2D and 3D product deliverables. Even users with no 3D experience are able to rapidly produce and flexibly deliver stunning product communications, bringing enhanced efficiency and quality across the enterprise. SolidWorks Composer provides users with an intuitive authoring environment that helps to improve workflows and quality. And with the ability to update content automatically, you can communicate ideas more effectively, ensuring that your stakeholders, partners, and customers all clearly understand product information. Let's take a look at the types of product communications you can create with SolidWorks Composer. SolidWorks Composer works with your native 3D design data, accessing CAD models as easy as File, Open. Metadata is also preserved, including the entire assembly hierarchy. Create clear and understandable technical illustrations, including BOM tables, exploded views, callouts, and annotations with just a few clicks, helping more effectively produce high-quality vector graphics for your technical documentation. Produce stunning product images for use in design review, as well as partner and customer communications using SolidWorks Composer's dedicated workshop for producing high-resolution raster graphics. It's a snap to create appealing animations directly from your product views. You can also adjust keyframes, lighting, and cameras, enabling you with the creative freedom to develop highly successful product communications. Using the free SolidWorks Composer Player, your interactive product experiences can be exported directly into PDFs or Microsoft Word, PowerPoint, and Excel. For online distribution, SolidWorks Composer experiences can be saved as executable files or even exported into customizable HTML web templates. Remember that it isn't just simple playback. SolidWorks Composer provides dynamic, interactive product experiences. Create interactive bill of materials, hyperlink components, create dynamic geometry elements, and more, all from a single content authoring platform. Easily maintain association between your product communications and your 3D design data. This means that when your designs change, you can update your communications automatically, ensuring that your product deliverables always represent the most recent designs. The gains of using SolidWorks Composer are immediate. As your workflows become more efficient, costs go down, and as your product communications improve, revenues will begin to grow. To get started turning your documentation into engaging 3D communications, contact your nearest SolidWorks reseller today.
All right. Fantastic. So, you saw them talking about SolidWorks Composer. The product that we've been selling for a number of years now has been 3D Via Composer. Not long after the end of this conference, we're going to introduce SolidWorks Composer. It'll be available as an upgrade to your existing 3D Via Composer products. And so there's a lot of really cool features coming into it. I'll be at the SolidWorks booth at the end of the day in the Partner Pavilion. We can talk about it if you like more information. So today is right now is the first session of all the various SolidWorks Composer sessions that we're giving during the course of the week. There's a couple of hands-on sessions that feel free to join in on, as well as a number of other sessions. We're going to talk about a couple of them today in our session, and I'll reference them as we go forward in this set of slides. Today we've got a number of us that are speaking. Myself, Earl Haas, Nicole Turley, and I work with SolidWorks, and then Chris Reynolds and John Cunningham are assisting us with their user experience with SolidWorks Composer. So I'm now missing my slide clicker. that's...
Oh, it's right there.
Oh, there it is. Make it a lot easier. There we go. So, as we get started, years and years ago, we had, as far as our computing devices, something as simple as the abacus, as a way of communicating information from one person to another. And over time, that way of communication has just increased, and we've got a lot of different tools available to us. So what is technical communication? It's really just a way of explaining processes and procedures about your product, as a way of showing us how to work with our product and in such a way that we can easily communicate those ideas across languages, across using pictures, using different ways of communication. The various stakeholders in a given organization all have various needs with respect to that communication. And quite often the deliverables consist of web content, marketing collateral, training manuals, repair manuals, the list goes on and on. All of these have needs for that content. So what we'll do today is have a look at what the industry is typically doing with their 3D CAD data. And then once we get done with that, I'll have a discussion with the folks here on their use case of their 3D content. And then finally, I'll finish up with a demo of the product. So let me go ahead and hand it on over to Nicole to talk about the industry here.
All right. Good morning, everyone. All right, as Earl stated, I'm going to cover the industry portion. And I've really broken that out into three different, sections for us to go through. The first one is, what are we doing today, right? What are you guys doing in your companies today to explain these processes and procedures? And then second, what are best-in-class companies doing to solve some of the problems that you guys might be running into? And then where's the technology headed that's going to allow us to achieve those best-in-class processes and procedures? Before we start, can I just get a couple raise of hands just so I can get a sense of who's in the room? First, who's actually a designer, engineer within your company? Okay. Anybody from sales and marketing in here? Great. Technical pubs, tech pubs? Great. Okay. So a pretty good mixture. Gives me a little bit more direction there. So let's start with, what you guys are doing today. What our customers are telling us, how they're putting together this content to explain this, all the processes and procedures and some of those problems. I would assume that most of you guys are using these tools today as well, right, to put together these instructions at various places within the company. We have found through our research that most companies actually use their CAD software predominantly, and second to that would be taking photographs. Right, but there's also some additional Adobe products that people use as well for maybe post-processing, what have you. So let's take a look at the process companies have to go through in order to use these solutions today, and maybe some of the problems that they might go through. Obviously, it starts off in engineering and design. We've got to start there. And again, most companies will create that CAD screenshot or take a photograph. Might be some late design revisions. I know that never happens, but there might be a couple. And then maybe some post-processing, right? Some content to those graphics with those Adobe products. A lot of companies will add a lot of text in there to explain those processes and procedures, put it into some page layout program, and then get it out to your customer. Right, so what's the problem with this process? And I'm assuming you guys, again, have run into this. Right, it's a serial process. One step has to happen before the next step can take place. There's several different packages in which you have to piece together this content, and unfortunately none of them speak together today. Right, and especially with that late design revision that might be taking place, unfortunately, in this process, we got to go all the way back to the beginning, again, because none of these steps in the process speak to each other or are connected. And it's just not a very efficient process. So a lot of our customers tell us we have a lot of market delays, time to market delays, a lot of increased cost. And if you really boil it down to the lifeblood of every company is the innovation, right? The time that you get to spend innovating your current products and new products. So you want to be able to spend as much time, that's going to make you more competitive in the market, right? That's going to reduce your cost, right? And a lot of companies are struggling to have time to spend on this particular area, right? Let's take a look at the quality, right? When we use these different tools that are out there today, again, a lot of texts are taking place, a lot of photographs are being taken, some graphics out of your CAD software. What are some of the problems you guys are running into that we hear, right? Sometimes the quality isn't where we want it to be. It's lower, it's not as effective, right? The whole goal of technical communications is to explain a process or procedure. So how successfully are you doing that? So I just asked 3 questions, and I say, what happens if the customer could be the guys on the shop floor that get these instructions, it could be the guys out in the field, it could be your supplier distribution network, or an end user customer, right? A lot of problems, we're a global economy now, so we have to work with multi-languages. So that's something that we always have to think about. Certainly can lead to problems, certainly big problems in cost, in warranty, customer satisfaction, if the customer can't understand the instructions, whatever you're trying to convey, how to assemble, how to use, how to maintain. And then also if the instructions aren't accurate. This seems to be quite a big problem we hear from our customers, that because this is such a serial process and none of it's connected, it's hard to keep continuously getting all those instructions updated. So really, how big of a problem is this for companies today? All right, we have engineering in the middle. They're living the good life, right? They get to use 3D, they get to use SolidWorks and gain all the benefits that 3D gives you. But every single department surrounding engineering has to explain a process or procedure about the product. And in today's world, none of those departments are connected to the 3D data. So the process is drastically affected and the quality takes a hit as well. And if we break down just one area out of all these different stakeholders that have to explain the process or procedure, you can see the compounding effect that companies have. For instance, we know a big problem in companies from our customers is assembly instructions on the shop floor. Right? You got the group that creates this content, right? And they're going to have all these process problems on how to get this created. Right? The guys are spending too much time on the shop floor. They got to wait till the end of the design cycle. Then the whole late design change and have to recreate that. And then they throw it over the wall to the guys on the shop floor who also have their own quality problems because they don't understand the instructions. They're not accurate. So a lot of errors are taking place. Training times are delayed. And again, this is just one area, right? If we go back to the previous slide, there's, again, every department in the company has to explain processes and procedures. So what are companies, doing, best-in-class companies doing to solve these problems? I'm getting this best-in-class content from the Albertine Group. I don't know if everyone's aware of who they are, but they're a third-party independent research company. And all they do is study best-in-class processes and procedures in our market. So really no connection to SolidWorks. So let's go through what they've described as some of the pressures that are leading to change, and also what they're doing about it and some of the results they've gotten based on those changes. And we're going to go through 2 reports. One is simply leveraging CAD data beyond design, and the other one is product communication strategies. So if we go into the first one of leveraging CAD data beyond design, what are some of the pressures that are leading, again, to this change? Higher demands from the customer, increased volume, reduced budgets. I'm sure a number of these will, ring true for you guys as well. So what are they doing about it? Just what we're talking about today. They're leveraging their CAD data to create this content, to explain these processes and procedures. What types of results have they gotten from doing this? At a pretty high percentage, they're hitting their project launch dates, their revenue budgets, their quality targets, they're increasing their revenue. You're going to see a very similar benefit to leveraging your CAD data and using 3D throughout your company as companies did when they went from AutoCAD 2D to working in a 3D environment for design. Okay, so you're going to get that speed, accuracy, reuse throughout your entire company now. Let's look at product communication strategies. Okay, you're going to see similar, pressures as you did in the previous report, right? Increased products, market competition, shortened schedules, lower budget. Strategies that these guys are using is to increase your reuse, right? No sense reinventing the wheel every time you need to explain a process or procedure. So best-in-class processes and procedures is to connect this data, reuse it. Also, create more nonverbal, right? Less text, more graphics. What types of results have best-in-class companies gotten from these strategies? A drastic decrease in development time, a decrease in translation cost, increased revenue, increased customer satisfaction. Okay, so some pretty significant improvements in these processes and procedures. So how are these companies achieving best-in-class processes and procedures? Are they using their CAD software? We know that most companies are today, but that's not how you achieve best-in-class. And we'll walk through the difference of the value of 3D and when you get that in design and you get that with technical communications. As Earl mentioned, we changed the name to SolidWorks Composer and have rebranded that. And in essence, it creates 2D content and 3D content to explain processes and procedures. The value, again, is to leverage the CAD data in order to create that content. Allows the user to work in that 3D environment, and it's going to improve those problems in process and quality that we explained before. How's it going to do that? Let's just take process and take a look at that. We went through that before. It's a very serial process. It's disjointed. It's manual. With Composer, now, because it's connected to the 3D data, we're going to be able to start earlier in the process. Right? Same time design is designing, you can now start to create that graphical content. Now that you're working in a 3D environment, and you're going to really see this different a little bit later in the demo portion, but we're going to be able to create that much more quickly than you can do that today. Now that we can create more graphical content, we're going to have less text, all right? More graphical content, less text. Now that we're connected to that 3D data, everything is going to stay associative. So we're going to eliminate all that huge time companies spend on revisions. How about quality? How are we going to improve that? Right? We talked about one of the strategies is less text, more graphics. Now again, that we can create it more quickly than we could before, start sooner in the cycle, we're going to decrease those translation costs. Now that we can create more content, higher level detailed content to explain these processes and procedures, decrease training times, all right, improve customer satisfaction, improve warranty. And now that it's connected to the 3D data, it's also going to be accurate. Every time that late design change, you've created all that content to explain the process and procedures, guess what? All those graphics will be updated now. So a drastic difference in errors taking place. Again, those warranty issues, decreased translation or training times. Now, I mentioned before, you can create 2D content, leverage 3D data to create 2D content, or you can create this 3D interactive content. What you get with 3D interactive content, just think of your own experience. right? You learn something more quickly if you can interact with it and turn it around, right? We've all gotten that photograph in instructions and thought, if I could just turn it just a little bit, I might be able to understand what they're trying to tell me to do in this process. That's what the interactive content takes you to a whole new level. So with that, I'm actually going to pass the baton to our panel that we have up here for you and introduce ProEdit. And they're actually going to take us through. They actually are a user of 3D of SolidWorks Composer. And they're going to explain their transition of going to a best-in-class processes and procedures with leveraging their CAD data to do that. So with that, I'm going to introduce Jonathan Cunningham from ProEdit, and his counterpart is Chris Reynolds. Thank you.
I'm an information developer with ProEdit, and ProEdit is an information development company. It's not an industry term you hear a whole lot. But what we do is companies come to us and they have source material in some form, may it be just in their heads or on paper or stacks of papers, or they might come to us with source material already in one form, and they need it developed into another form, some sort of presentation material to give to their either internal employees or to their customer base. And we do that in a number of ways. The first solution we offer is a staffing and recruiting, where someone says, we need someone in our office for 6 months, or we need someone in our office for the next 10 years or permanently, and we find someone in that area to fit that solution, your company's solution. And in any field of technical communication, whether it be for technical writing, illustrating, instructional design, anything that your company might need in that area. And we find them in the location of the company to fit that need. The other is instructional design, which is developing training materials for e-learning or instructor-based learning. And that includes, the 4-day trainings that you have, or maybe your company has had an e-learning session where you have to, sit at the computer for 30 minutes and go through an interactive training. And we work with the companies to develop exactly what they need in that area. Editing, we edit a large level of anything that might come across your board, whether it's an instruction manual, a paper, marketing release materials. And one of our main focuses is technical writing. And with technical writing, we create a lot of product and process manuals. And with that, there's a lot of writing that's involved. There's a lot of making sure that the process is intuitive for the user. But if a picture's worth 1,000 words, and that 1,000 words is going to cost, a large chunk of money to be translated into 10 different languages, you don't want a lot of those words. You don't want those 1,000 words. You want the picture. And pictures take a lot of time, a lot more time than the words do to create. And so we had a unique experience with a client that they needed a lot of illustrations in a short amount of time, and editing by hand just wasn't cutting it. So ProEdit worked with SolidWorks to come up with our unique solution. So Chris Reynolds.
Good morning. I am also an information developer at ProEdit, and I handle technical writing, and I'm also now a SolidWorks Composer user. And I'm going to tell you about one of the projects that we've been working on, and a couple of the projects actually, for a couple of clients, and how SolidWorks Composer has really streamlined our work process. And one of the companies that we have done work for using SolidWorks Composer is built by Agassi and Reyes. That's Andre Agassi's exercise equipment company, and they make a variety of different pieces of equipment. And for this project, we were tasked to develop user manuals for 12 different pieces of exercise equipment. They use weight stacks and cables to facilitate a variety of different exercises. And some of the parameters of this project were that the client needed these manuals to be turned around as quickly as possible. They needed a high degree of detail because these were fairly complex machines. And we were to prepare to incorporate design revisions while we were making these manuals. See, they were doing test builds and design changes at the same time as we were doing our technical documentation process, and we had to be ready to incorporate these changes midstream. Now, some of the challenges for that sort of a project is that before we started using SolidWorks Composer, we did technical illustrations by hand, which means that we had to wait for the client to send us a series of assembly photos. We had to manually draw each technical illustration over the assembly photos and make sure that we captured all of the details. And small changes to a design would render entire technical illustrations completely obsolete, especially if the client requested a change in angle. So we had an experience with the client that I'm talking about, built by Agassi and Reyes, involving logos that were originally pre-assembled, and which turns out had to be demonstrated how to assemble these logos in step 12 of a 15-step process, which means the illustrations for steps 1 through 11 now have to be revised. So before 3D via Composer, SolidWorks Composer, we would have to go back through and manually change these illustrations. As I said, waiting for new angles, new assembly photos from the client. We basically hit the reset button on our work effort. We would have to reproduce an entire illustration with a small design change. And to give you some context for this sort of work effort we're talking about hitting the reset button on, each of these illustrations would take, on average, an hour to compose. And if this assembly manual takes 15 views, 15 different illustrations to build the assembly narrative, then we're talking about a 15-hour work effort that's just been completely restarted. And that can get extremely expensive. And here's an example from another client. They make children's toys and baby equipment. And you can see these slight changes to the design, which don't seem like substantial alterations, would cause, a repeat of the work effort. And so you can imagine what sort of time we're talking about when the machine is something a little bit more complex, like this exercise equipment. Well, our process now is much more streamlined and much more flexible. We use SolidWorks Composer, and we use the client's actual CAD data to produce the narrative of the assembly. We take the CAD data in, we use Composer to very intuitively manipulate the models themselves, and that leads to an intuitive assembly process, documentation that feels spatially the way that these machines go together. And it also means that we don't have to manually reproduce technical illustrations when there's slight changes. We use the program to export high-quality technical images, and we incorporate that into any other software that we're using to build the manual itself. One model is sufficient to produce all of the technical illustrations for each step of the entire assembly, as opposed to 200-300 different assembly photos and having to manually recreate them. We saved a lot of time. One of the key features of the program that really helped out this project was the selection set feature, which allows you to group parts of a complex machine and very easily re-access those without that. For example, the weight stack that's pictured in this model, instead of going back and finding every single weight to manipulate it to produce different images, you could just group that all together as the weight stack set and very quickly and intuitively move through the models. So some of the benefits that we have experienced is 15 to 20% reduction in cost to produce this technical documentation, which leads to increased revenue for us. And also, we were able to win this sales bid based on the capabilities that this program allowed us to offer, which we wouldn't have been able to offer if we weren't using SolidWorks Composer. Our delivery time was drastically decreased. Our client is very satisfied with the technical documentation. And because the process is so intuitive, and because we're sure that we're capturing a high degree of detail in this documentation, our client is satisfied with a higher quality technical documentation product, and their customers are more satisfied with a more intuitive and more effective assembly experience. And because of the nature of the program, our clients do not have to be concerned that any of their CAD data can be altered in any way. It just allows us to rearrange it to show how it goes together, and they don't have to worry about their data. Some of the benefits that we're exploring, features of the program that we are going to be using in the future, are interactive HTML outputs that will give a more interactive experience for our clients and their customers, and also Flash video applications to decrease even further the amount of text required to show an assembly. This is just a couple other examples. That's the Power Stride machine on the left, and the quad pulley on the right, just other pieces of equipment. When they had small changes to the design, we just went back through, made what changes we needed to, and in the time it took us to redraw one illustration manually, we would be able to reproduce the technical illustrations for an entire manual. So we have a couple of videos for you to show some of the exploratory products that we've been able to come up with. This is an example of the weight stack that's fairly central to all of these pieces of exercise equipment. Just a simple video of the assembly. And this is not something that the client requested, but we can show them even more capability than we built the job for and interest them in further work, likewise with future clients. And we have another video from a different client that makes children's equipment showing a similar kind of assembly process. And this client is highly multinational, so their assembly manuals are usually translated into half a dozen languages, and so if we can, this doesn't require any translation at all. And then I'm going to hand it back to Earl.
How's that for a transition? That was a nice, smooth transition here. All right. Thanks, fellas. It's a fantastic use of your product. At this time, if you'd like to ask any questions about what their process has been, what kinds of experiences they have, we can do that right now before I go through and just go through some of the possibilities that we have with SolidWorks Composer. So, any questions to get started here?
How do you handle when a customer has changes? Do they actually send you different CAD data? And then how do you manage that on your end?
Depending on the level of the adjustments, our experience with built by Agassi and Reyes was more of a sequence rather than an updated CAD data situation. So like I mentioned with the logos, they changed the sequence of the steps, and that was very easy. However, if there were design changes and there were a couple of fins on a couple of the pieces of equipment that did get updated, they would send new CAD data, and we were able to very quickly reproduce the technical documentation. So.
Do you just have the same name and overwrite what you had before? Or do you rename things? Or do you have a PM system that you manage that data with? Or how's that work?
Well, we have a PM system to make sure that we don't have any version control issues. But with the situation that we're talking about, depending on the way that the process is set up, it's actually possible to incorporate those changes into the framework of the program that we've set up. So we've saved different views, say, for different steps in the assembly process. If these fins change, we can use the program to update the CAD data, and any views that involve those new pieces update automatically.
Do they merge?
Yeah. It merges the CAD data.
Have any of your clients used the configurations within their CAD model? Has that posed any special issue? I'm sorry. Have any of your clients used configurations within the CAD data? And does that have any particular difficulty with the Composer software?
Our experience has not been that we haven't encountered any CAD data that has configurations. All of the equipment that we've worked on so far has just been a single piece of equipment, and all of the components go in the order that they go on in that. So we don't have any experience with that yet, but we're capable of doing it.
I actually have a session tomorrow morning, same time, one of these swan rooms. I'm going to go over managing Composer files, and so to that extent, working with different configurations of an assembly, we can actually set up workflows that help us to manage those different configurations at the top level. Down below in the sub-assemblies and the components themselves, Composer automatically pulls over the appropriate configuration for those components. So.
Anyone
One
else?
more? No? All right, very good.
Wait, we got one more
Oh.
over here.
All right.
I was just curious about the toolbox features and how that carries over if you have to export. We haven't worked with a company outside of our own to do this kind of work, and if you've come across having to deal with hardware and such large quantities of hardware.
I'm sorry, could you repeat the last bit of that?
So dealing with managing large amounts of hardware when a customer exports a model to you, would they have to have the toolbox feature configured so that they would have the same results?
What you could do is, there's two different ways. If you're receiving the SolidWorks model, then yes, you would need the corresponding toolbox features if they're custom, or alternatively, they could use the Composer add-in on their end and save out the Composer file directly for you and then send that to you. So there's different ways of working with it. If they do it that way, the second way, then the Composer model would come, the toolbox data, the graphics data would come across directly. So. Very good. All right, let's have a look at the product then. We've looked at some of the things that the general industries, what we're seeing is going on. We've had a look at what ProEdit has had an opportunity to experience with SolidWorks Composer. Let's have a look at that tool and what it brings to us. And at the end of the day, it really is a matter of choosing the right tool for your technical communications. To be sure, I've got a CAD tool. Very good product to use for creating engineering content, for doing simulation, for doing design work of the product. However, it's not necessarily the right tool to quickly get the job done. I can create all kinds of great screenshots. I can create drawings out of that product. I can create explode views out of that product. It all does a very good job of it. However, I'm adding all kinds of additional engineering information and overhead for something that I'm really just trying to create a communication concept as opposed to an engineering concept. And SolidWorks Composer allows us to separate those two ideas to be able to work together, as Nicole said earlier. So let's take a look at some of that required content that we're going to create. In most of our documents, most of our kind of content, we're going to have some kind of a cover shot. Perhaps we'll create some kind of a parts list, whether it be for a catalog or even just an operator's guide, a service manual. How do I work with that? Perhaps we'll create operating instructions for that system. And of course, we're going to have to publish that content. So let's get started with the cover shot. And I brought in this track setting machine. It's a simple machine, It's a machine that helps us lay down the railroad ties and make sure that the ties are aligned, make sure that everything is nice and parallel so we don't get trains running off our tracks. Now this model was developed in SolidWorks, and to be sure, we've got the tracks in place that really show us an idea of what it's doing in space. But at the end of the day, I'm not really interested in this subassembly within Composer. So I actually have the opportunity to switch it. Let me switch it over to a different view here. We'll just go on to this guy here. And we'll go back to this. We'll just select that component. What I have the opportunity to do is simply show the other selection. I can ghost that selection. So now it's not being shown near as strong in my scene. So I can really focus in on that model. To be sure, I can change the angle of it if I want to show the right kind of views. Maybe I want to just capture that view And that actually is a starting point for the image that I want to work with. I can actually set up some things, maybe set up a camera view so I can go back to that orientation when I'm ready to, when I want to go back to that same basic orientation. Equally, I can add some, just some basic background information, change it up a bit, maybe add some nice rendering kinds of things, maybe add some, mirror doesn't make sense in the space, but we can add some shadowing to the model. Now, to be sure, you would expect to be able to have some nice shaded images out of this, and we can always capture that so that we can take a look at that product at some other point. But we also have the ability to create some technical views, maybe a nice silhouette view. In this case, I'm going to just go ahead and clear out that the background, so I've got more of a technical illustration that I can start from. And the idea here, of course, is that I can really work with and generate a lot of different images with respect to that model. But I'm going to go back here and create my cover image, and maybe apply I actually have a couple of lights. No, I don't. Where we'll just go ahead and change the background a bit, and let's see, we'll go ahead and remove the outlines on this thing, and then call that our cover shot. So what SolidWorks Composer does then is it really allows us to try out a lot of different things, have access to them, and then as needed, we can go back and reactivate those views. So unlike in a CAD system or otherwhere, you have to set up the named views, you have to make sure your system's all set before you hit that print screen. Composer allows us to compose the images that we're generating and add whatever content we need to back into the models. So again, it gives us the opportunity to create many rendering choices. Perhaps we're creating some illustration images, or even more of a cartoonish kind of a look and feel to that image. Whomever we're giving this content to, if they don't like that particular image, I can quickly go and generate another image and then work from that one and have all of those available to me at any given time. So it allows us to create nice lifelike visualization with SolidWorks Composer. Now, of course, we want to generate a parts list, some kind of an explode of the model so that we can see exactly what we want to talk about with a given part of the component. So let's have a look at what that might be. Go back over to my starting point here, and I've generated a couple of selection sets to help myself out. Basically, I can get a hold of the handle, maybe different components within the scene, so I can actually set up some groups so that I can work with them. I can hide them, show them whatever makes sense. I'm just going to jump into just a subassembly of this model. And SolidWorks Composer gives me the opportunity to quickly pull apart the model as appropriate. I've got some nice explode tools that helps me to generate a very quick, nice explode view of the model. I can start to generate a view, maybe create some bomb views of that for perhaps an assembly view or assembly instructions. Maybe it's for a service manual or a parts catalog that we might create. Alternatively, we might be creating an operator's manual that requires us to show the user how to take this off of the truck and reassemble it on site. And so perhaps it's a case where we need to disassemble it, show it in its on the truck environment. So let's go back here, and once again, I'll just get rid of the track assembly for the time being, and we'll add in some, we'll add the ground in here so we get a nice reference point for what the model looks like. I'll grab the handle assembly, which is that front handle, and we can simply take advantage of some of the tools within Composer, which allows me to just pull apart the model, place it where I like, maybe rotate it a bit so that it's makes sense on the scene. And I'm not necessarily interested in worrying about exactly what it looks like, where components are. I'm more interested in making sure that I know exactly how things are fitting together. And of course, I'm just blowing this apart here, so let me select the component itself, move it where it makes sense. We'll grab the track setting machine here, and I'll just grab it by hand here. A power pack right there. Grab it, move it in place. I left a couple of lights behind, so Composer gives me a nice way of moving the components into place by simply copy their locations over here if I missed something. At that point, I can simply go ahead and create another view. So I'm taking a lot of nice quick snaps of the view. I've been able to move things around. I can add additional information to the scene to show how things are working with it. And so at the end of the day then, we can create some nice quick parts lists, some information about what the product looks like, add some call outs and such to the scene to help communicate an idea. Earlier, Chris mentioned the notion of a picture's worth 1,000 words. But I also ask you if, which 1,000 words we're talking about here. Here we have the opportunity to really describe what those 1,000 words are. So with SolidWorks Composer, we can really help us to generate some nice polished professional illustrations quickly and easily. All right, so we've got some parts lists. Those are being used in various different ways. To be sure, operating instructions are equally of use. Those operating instructions, again, could be simply assembly guides for manufacturing. What's the step-by-step on the manufacturing side? Maybe it's for instructions on for your operator. How do you assemble, how you disassemble the products? So I'll jump back over to my scene here, go back to my model. And in this case, what we're going to do then is simply show the process of disassembling. How would I go about lifting that up, this power pack up off the track, off the machine itself? So we'll just go ahead and come in here and select a couple of different components, and I'll go ahead and turn on my rotation. So we can see we can rotate this guy here, but that's not necessarily the right location. So we'll jump in and actually select something that makes a little bit more sense. Get the right angle of this guy here. There we go. So we'll go ahead and rotate that out a bit. And we'll copy that transform so he's basically in the same place. Then we'll do it. We'll just go ahead and move this guy. Again, that's not going to be where I want it, so let's move the rotation out about the right location. So Composer is actually giving me a lot of flexibility about how I want to show the content. I'm not so worried necessarily about the actual engineering motion of this thing. I want to give an idea, a concept to my audience on what really needs to happen. So I'm going to finish this up real quick here with creating a circular arrow to help communicate an idea about this actual process. And again, this arrow, we'll go ahead and change its radius a little bit. And we'll grab that. Maybe use some of our drag handles to control the shape and size of the arrows and so on. Of course, the arrow's going in the wrong direction, so let's go ahead and change that so that it makes a little bit more sense to the reader, to the author. And we're pretty much happy with that, so I'll go ahead and take a snapshot. So we could go ahead and create a series of these things. I'm going to step forward a little bit over to this particular item. So I've created a couple of different examples. We've got the starting point of the operator's guide. I've added in some arrows to show the individual views. I've actually taken advantage of a tool that we call the digger, which is a tool that allows me to focus in on items, but at the same time, it's an interactive tool. So this digger gives me that interactivity, and then when I'm ready, I can take the snapshot and use that for my own purposes. And we've got a number of other items showing the use of annotations and such in addition to that. And the nice thing about these annotations are they're within the system. If I'm trying to do this in my CAD system, I have to model those things up. If I don't want to model them, I would then create them in Illustrator or Photoshop or some other tool. I have all that tools right here in SolidWorks Composer. So we see that we can create a lot of different information within SolidWorks Composer to help create operating sites, to help us convey nice, complex processes quickly, easily, and in such a way that we don't have to write a lot of extra text to describe exactly what's going on in the process. Now, naturally, we're going to have to publish that content. And so what does that mean to us then? If we want to go ahead and publish that, we have to render all that content out. So we go back over to my document. Now I've created this Word document as a starting point. I've created some placeholder images. I've actually been able to start working on my document. Maybe it's a prior product or a side product that I'm working on. And I know the basic concept, so I'm just going to put some placeholder images in that document before I actually have those images. So this is what I've got here for my operator's guide in the document. I go back over to my scene, and I've got all my images. I'm happy with them, all set up. So I'll just go ahead and head over to my high-resolution workshop and take advantage of saving out all the views all at once to this folder here. So I've got them all located in my output images. So let's go ahead and save those images out. And what SolidWorks Composer will do is simply go through and activate each of those views individually in such a way that it's going to overwrite each of those separate images. You see that it's updating them all as it moves through all the images. Head back over to my Word document. Now I'm using Word here. You may be working with InDesign. You may be working with some other publishing tool to help with the output, the final content that you're working with. But the concepts are very similar. In this case, I've simply added a link to all of those images so that I can go through and simply update. Let me just change the location of this thing. Clearly it didn't work. All right. All right, so it's got the one. That's great. How's this for a demo? And in the quietness of this, now it's all out of whack. That's all right. The idea is sound, though. We have the ability to simply put together and then simply update the individual images so that when we are done with our changes, we can work with that concept so that as we're moving forward with our process, we can update our images. So I can get consistent output basically in one step. We've generated all those images, we've laid them out, and now we have the ability to put them back into our document. So we've gone through all of our steps, but naturally we're going to run into a design change. What do we do? Folks here from ProEdit would say that they would have to redo every single one of those images to get started, to redo it when they have those changes. With SolidWorks Composer, now they don't have to go through all of the redo. They're changing some minor things, to be sure, but they are able to continue forward with the process fairly quickly. So how do we do that? We'll just go ahead and come back up here and grab my file, go ahead and update. We'll go ahead and update our document. And again, we'll move up to the version that we have, the newest version of the model. And what SolidWorks Composer will do is simply go through and evaluate all of the geometry and metadata that was in that system to sort out exactly what changes were needed, and then update all of the views. From that point on, we can then go back in. In this particular case, I exchange the changes are simple. The handle assembly is longer. We've added some nice, cool mag wheels to the track setting machine, and we're on our way again. We can go back and look at. We can look back at all of the views that we had, and we can see that the geometry has changed, but the images are back in the manner that we had them set up earlier. That's great. So now all we have to do then is simply come back in and save our views back over the top of the document. Once we've done that, now all I have to do is go back into my Word document, update that, print it back off to publishing, and we're on our way. It's fantastic. An anecdote for this was I had a customer come up to me and say that they had a project that took 6 months to a year to work on, and 2 weeks before the shipment of that product, and they had to have the documentation put together. It was all done. They were using Composer to generate all of the content. In a water cooler conversation 2 weeks before release, before shipment of this product, they were told that all the wiring for this product originally had been designed to be above ground because it was designated to go to New England. And in fact, the recipient of that product was in Saudi Arabia, and so all the engineering work had shifted the wiring underground. And so the documentation must be changed ahead of that. And in those 2 weeks, they were able to change all of the documentation, still be able to ship on time. It was fantastic to hear that story. All right, so we've been able to get the changes in. We've been able to update the content. We've seen that we have lifelike visualization using SolidWorks Composer, using the cover shots. We've seen the parts list. We've seen the operating instructions. the consistent output, and then everything updates within the product. And I'll leave you with this. We've gone through the Aberdeen group. We've seen the different industries. We've seen what ProEdit's done and a bit of a product. A couple of examples. Cardiovascular systems. Chris Narveson is actually presenting tomorrow on some of his tips and tricks, things that he's found within the product that has helped him with the product. He's showing that tomorrow, middle of one of the first sessions just after noon. And they started using that product from first having a lot of documentation for their medical devices to now creating a video for the same basic process on how to operate this machine that they're working with. Beckman Coulter is equally a case study where they've done a lot of work to help instruct new employees on how to assemble their medical devices in a consistent manner so that they can have a good reproducible environment. So again, back to my original notion. Years and years ago, the way of communicating was through various techniques. The computing device here is a simple abacus. But now we're taking advantage of all the tools of today's computers to generate clean, crisp illustrations and content for content to communicate ideas and concepts. Again, the last view of this is the various sessions that we've got going on coming up. Today is the first. This one's the first of them. We've got sessions throughout the week for Composer. Feel free to attend any one of these. So I'll leave that up. Thank you.
Any questions?
Yeah, I'm available for questions right now. We do have some time. Looks like wow, we have an hour. We have an hour. Fantastic.
Is the structure in your 3D Composer tied to the structure of the CAD assembly? So if you have an assembly with 5, 6, 7, 8 sub-assemblies and 100 components, you're moving things around on the screen. Are those grabs where you're grabbing that entire unit? Is that in a sub-assembly inside your assembly?
Those are the sub-assemblies. Yeah, you can see here on the left-hand side here. Those are the sub-assemblies within and the components within that assembly that we brought in to work with. So indeed, and we're using that as well. It's bringing in, as I mentioned, the earlier question answer. We actually bring in the specific configuration for those components.
So that is the feature tree we're seeing on the left side.
Yeah, that's exactly. That's the assembly tree that you see that you would have seen in SolidWorks. That's right.
So that's the actual art files and assembly files that it's referencing, or did you have to export those?
It's an export of sorts. Yeah, what we're doing is we're capturing out of Composer the assembly structure. We're capturing the graphics data, as you can see here, as well as meta properties. So they're calling what meta properties here. They are the custom properties that you're adding on the SolidWorks side. So any custom. It's not the live model data, and I'm actually happy that it's not the live model data. And the reason I say that is that I can be working on this document and engineering can move forward with their work, and I've only captured just the graphics data for my work, and when necessary at a later time I can capture the later version and then work with that. And I'm not tying up. I don't have to take a copy of the assembly and work on that. I don't have to worry about multiple copies of that. I can just take a snapshot and then do my work, when later on come back to it. Yeah. Yes?
Can you add detail that may not be in the model that you export using like annotations?
Can I add detail? Absolutely. And as a way of speeding up things, I bypass some of those things. I can add detail, for example. I can add labels to this guy. Oops. So I can quickly add some labels to my scene and perhaps show different kinds of content to it. I can add text, I can change the text as appropriate for this to help communicate it. And of course, I mean, as you might expect, I mean, we're all talking about 3D content, so it's all attached to get within there, so it makes it easy to work with, and I can make changes as appropriate to that.
Really maybe like a pattern.
Oh.
A pattern or a texture, this kind of thing?
Yeah, I can add textures to this. And the textures are going to be bitmap based, so I don't get the appearances that I want out of SolidWorks necessarily. So if I need those, I can certainly use them within SolidWorks Composer. However, the images, I mean, we saw in the presentation. Let me see if I can't go back to it. A lot of slides. Almost hit it. There we go. We saw in this particular video the notion of the textures that we've actually added to it. We added the bitmap images onto the top of that truck in order to show the graphics that we wanted to. But that's all coming out of a Photoshop image. So, yeah.
Can you load more than one model into the Composer? and work on it?
Absolutely. Yeah, I've loaded just the one. Actually, in my presentation at 2:45 this afternoon, I'm going to go in and show some of that. And basically what I'm doing is adding a number of different components, different sub-assemblies. I can pull together different tooling if I need to into the model, into the scene that I'm working on. So very similar to a SolidWorks drawing, Composer is a drawing. It's a container of assemblies, one or more assemblies, one or more parts that we're pulling together to help communicate an idea. And so we can certainly do that.
So Earl, I've got a quick question. We've had a Composer for a while now, and we're kind of struggling to implement it in our company. One of the questions is we have a very large base of EPDM globally, and aside from the static images that you can publish, can you kind of talk about what might be happening with the animated sequences and EPDM? I mean, is there going to be an opportunity to make that work with EPDM? I don't know if I'm going to be able to make the talk tomorrow or not.
I touch on it in tomorrow morning's discussion. So what ends up happening is you have to add some workflows to EPDM in order to accommodate the Composer authoring aspect of your data. And in that regard, then it's a matter of adding the appropriate links, references, and so on from the published content, your images, back to the Composer model file, which in this case is an SMG file. So, and then equally the same reference back to the original CAD models. And I'll just switch to CAD models because it can be different sources. I've had demo cases where I've got the SolidWorks model from the customer, but I needed a tool. So I've gone to GrabCAD and grabbed a wrench or a screwdriver, and it happened to be a Pro E file, or it happened to be something else. I didn't really care. Composer gives me the opportunity to bring those other file types in together into the same scene and still be able to work with them as part of my overall scene. I didn't have to convert it into SolidWorks, create a container assembly, and then bring it into Composer. I could do that directly. I could just pull together things. So if I'm missing components, if I need additional items that the engineer simply didn't put in, I understand they're not putting all the fittings in necessarily into an assembly. I can do that myself. I can add additional fittings into the assembly for my communication purposes. So it helps with the overall, the final product, if you will. So. Right. Much like
Or does that be cached?
it would have to be cached to machine, right? I mean, Composer is like any other tool on its own. SolidWorks, Composer, Word, Excel, whatever you're managing, those files, those individual tools are not necessarily aware of it. Even SolidWorks is not necessarily aware of those files. The add-in gives us the notion that it's aware of it. Composer doesn't have an add-in at this point for EPDM, so that's where the creation of references and having the local copy certainly assists with that. Now, to be sure, is it local? Is it cached or not? That's the management side of things. So, and so that's where the line gets drawn. Is it's now in the EPDM management side of things as opposed to the Composer file. So, yep. Very good. Well, I thank you, everyone, for coming today. Once again, we have a whole slew of slides coming up here in the next, and I encourage you to join us on any one of those slides. So, thank you.